John Holmes is the UN Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs. Mr. Holmes, thank you for joining us here at CBS News. I understand you've just returned from the flood-stricken areas of Pakistan, and give us your first impressions when you peered out the helicopter window and you were looking over these areas there.
What's very striking is the sheer extent of the flooding. I mean, we flew for many miles down the main river of the Indus and one or two of the other river systems. And as far as the eye could see, either side of the river, and as long as we were flying, the areas were flooded. And that flooding is continuing to spread. And that's only a very small proportion of the parts of Pakistan that are flooded. So it's the simple geographical extent of these flooding and the number of people affected which are so striking. As well, of course, as the fact that that means that people have lost their livelihoods, people are sheltering on embankments, wherever they can find dry land, and waiting for the waters to subside. We need to help them survive, but we also need to help them rebuild their lives afterwards, and that's a massive challenge.
Yeah, I heard someone kind of size it up as we've got an area more than the size of the state of Florida that's affected by these floods, and you've got a country of 170 million people, correct?
That's right. You have probably 20 million people is the government's latest estimate of people affected, and so the floods of waves are still coming down the river system, so this may well get significantly worse. It's more than 1/10 of the population of Pakistan, and it stretches from north to south of Pakistan and through some of the most fertile areas of Pakistan, which depend on irrigation systems which may now be damaged. So as well as this immediate humanitarian crisis, which is very serious, more people affected than in the tsunami or the Haiti earthquake or even the Pakistan earthquake of 5 years ago, although they were far more deadly in terms of lives lost. So you have that problem of actually keeping them alive with food and clean water and shelter. And medical care particularly, because one of the things we fear most is an outbreak of waterborne diseases, diarrhea, maybe even cholera, malaria and skin diseases. And these things are starting to happen, and we must work very, very hard to make sure we don't have a second wave of deaths, which is much bigger than the first.
Yeah, I want to pick up on those 2 points. First of all, I understand more than 1,600 people have died so far from this calamity?
That's right, which is a remarkably small figure when you look at the actual size of it, and particularly in the mountain areas in the north where there were massive torrents and flash flooding, which is where most of the casualties actually were.
Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of disease, there was a WHO official that said this is going to be a serious concern. They've already reported a case or two of cholera.
Yes, but more worrying than those 1 or 2 cases of cholera is 30,000 cases or more of what's called acute watery diarrhea, which is not very different from cholera in many ways. Other waterborne diseases, of course, stagnant water is a haven for mosquitoes, so malaria, which is already a problem in many parts of Pakistan, is going to get worse. So it's those kind of issues we're most worried about, where those diseases prey on people who are weakened by hunger and being out in the open, and then you can get a very high death toll. So that's why it's very important that we, and of course the Pakistan government who are in the lead, make sure we have the surveillance, the clinics, the drugs to tackle that before it gets out of hand.
Of course, the big question here is aid getting to the people who need it so desperately? We have reports now of people standing in the roadways, blocking the roadways, burning things because they're angry at the government because they say aid delivery is very slow.
Well, it is always a real problem in these cases, especially when you have millions and millions of people affected, reaching everybody. And I'm the first to admit we are very far from reaching everybody who's in need of assistance. We've probably reached 1 million people with clean water, 1 million people with food, and we're stepping up those figures rapidly. But we need to reach 6 or 8 million, so that will give you some idea of the distance we still have to go. We're scaling up our presence through supplies arriving in the country, more staff arriving in the country. But as we saw with the Haiti earthquake, these things simply do not happen overnight. They cannot. The scale is too big. But we're scaling up as fast as we can. But there will be stories of people not getting aid for some time to come, I fear. That's the nature of these disasters.
Undersecretary General John Holmes, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm Ucciardo here at the United Nations for CBS News.